So some students say that they don't understand what is diffusion. So before we look at the video, take a look at this picture, okay? So at this moment, it's not very important to know the details of diffusion. If you can feel that it's a way for molecules for moving from one side to another, that's good enough, okay? So imagine this ink, okay? Adding ink into water, but I don't shake it, imagine I don't shake it. So here is a high concentration area. The water at the outside has very low concentration or even no ink. So imagine even I don't shake the flask, the molecules will automatically move from the high concentration area to the low concentration area by nature, naturally, right? So then after some time, other areas will become darker because the ink molecules move to the outside. 所以咪100對0，跟住而家咪可能係60對40咁樣咯，係嘛 ？And eventually the molecules will be evenly distributed，就度度都係50、50、50、50咁樣啦。Okay, so the video I'm not going to play here, but maybe you can go home and watch it. Okay, to feel how the molecules move. So today we are focusing on the process after absorption of food. That means once the food enters the blood, they will be passed to the body cells, right? So what will happen to these food substances when they successfully get into the body cells? Okay. But then we have to answer the first question. The food substances at this moment is only in the blood capillaries in the villi, in the small intestine area. But imagine they have to go to the body cells in your leg, in your brain, in your arm. So the first question is, how are the food being transported to other body parts? Okay. So that is our first question. So look at this diagram. It's also in your textbook. Okay, not in your notes, but it's in your textbook. You have several minutes to look at this picture and try to answer this question. Okay? Describe the transport pathway for the following food substances: glucose, amino acids, or vitamin A. So you are going to do this. Okay, I'm going to give you 3 minutes or 4 to 5 minutes. Don't type, again, you are going to type the answer, but you are not sending it out yet. So everybody participate. So 1至10號嘅同學就請你答 A 啦。跟住 okay, my hint is, imagine these dots are, let's say, glucose molecules, okay? They go into the capillaries, and I'm now tracing how these glucose molecules would move in the body until they get to different body cells. So if you look carefully, the circles in the picture mean something, okay? And at the moment, I don't need you to memorize, but I want you to know how to read this picture, okay? So type out the flow chart, you can follow. So the glucose molecules would be first absorbed into the blood capillaries in the villi and enters this blood vessel. And by this blood vessel, it is then carried to liver. After passing through the liver, the glucose will be carried by another blood vessel and finally arriving at the heart. The heart pumps out the blood which contains the absorbed glucose molecule, the yellow one, through another big blood vessel called aorta. But the name of the vessel is not important. Just say blood vessel. This blood vessel is connected to all different body parts so that eventually the glucose would arrive at different body parts. So that's very good by these 4 girls. Okay, thank you very much. So that's excellent work. Okay, so how about amino acids? 如果你稍為醒目啲，你就會知道今次就好容易啦。Okay, for amino acids, the answer now should be simple, because if you think about it, amino acid is water soluble. So, same as glucose, they are absorbed into the blood capillaries. And because they are absorbed into the blood capillaries, the transport pathway should be exactly the same as the answer for glucose, as the pathway of glucose. Do you now understand? All right. So the answer for B should be exactly the same as the answer for A. So that means when you give the answer for C, what should you first consider before you trace the pathway in the picture? The first thing you should consider is whether this food substance is water soluble or fat soluble. So by your knowledge, how about vitamin A? For vitamin A, the first thing you should remember is that it is a fat soluble substance. So that's why they are absorbed into the lacteal, all right, this yellow part of the villus. So therefore, it will then be first transported by the lymph vessel. Okay. Now, lymph vessel is different from blood vessel. Lymph is different from blood. But the amazing thing in your body is that the lymph vessel actually rejoins blood vessel. So therefore, in your flow chart, you should tell me this. So then the vitamin A will enter blood vessel. And by this blood vessel, it is transported to the heart. And once it enters the heart pumps out the blood and it enters the big blood vessel here. Again, this blood vessel, aorta, is connected to many different body parts so that the food substances, the vitamin A can now arrive at different body parts. Okay? So to summarize, for water-soluble food substances like monosaccharides, they are absorbed into the capillaries. Then they are transported by blood vessels to liver. In the liver, actually, those monosaccharides would be processed, discussed later on, okay? And after processing, the monosaccharides would be transported by another blood vessels and eventually arrive at the heart. The heart is responsible for pumping out the blood and distribute all the food substances to different body parts. So the monosaccharide will be transported by another blood vessels called aorta and eventually arrive at body cells which now they can be used by these body cells. All right. For fat-soluble substances such as vitamin A, although they are absorbed by the lacteal, not capillaries, the amazing thing is that eventually they have a way to arrive at the heart. In the lacteal, the vitamin A or fat-soluble substances would be transported by lymph vessels, which rejoins a blood vessels. So the vitamin A will eventually arrive at the heart. The heart pumps out the blood into the blood vessels and arrives at different body cells. The next question, we now understand how the food substances are transported by different pathways to body cells. The next question is, once they arrive at the body cells, how would they be used? So this is what we call assimilation. Okay? We are going to look at 3 food substances, carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and see how they are assimilated. That means used by body cells. So for every of these food substances, you need to know first the function in the cell. So let's say carbohydrate. We need to know what's the function once they enter into the body cell. How are they being used? But sometimes you eat too much, right? And the cells cannot use them all. So for these excess parts, how are they being handled? Okay, so fate 解命運，即係話呢啲 excess 嘅 food substances 有啲咩下場咧咁樣。So take out your notes and you're going to mark down answers. To understand how carbohydrates are assimilated, we need a little bit of revision. Remember that simple sugars, monosaccharides, disaccharides, they are small, so they can be directly used as energy source, while polysaccharides, they are big and they are good for using as energy storage. And remember that there are many different types of polysaccharides, okay? Each of them has special shape and function. And you have to remember that our body only can make glycogen. We cannot make starch, we cannot make cellulose, okay? So how will the carbohydrates in the blood, which now should all be monosaccharides because they are digested, right? So how are they being assimilated? So the red pathways represent how the absorbed glucose are transported and also distributed to different body cells for functioning, for use, to release energy, okay? While the green pathways, all right, the green pathways represent when there is excess glucose, how does the body deal with them? 好啦 ，bonus 啊，我冇 highlight 到嗰啲箭嘴啦，例如呢個，例如呢個，代表咩咧？其實就代表 how are the storage being used？ 你儲嘅嘢都係想用翻啫，即係你冇理由儲錢係為咗將來唔用㗎。你儲嘅嘢最後將來都係想你喺唔夠嘅時候用嘅啫。咁例如當你嘅 blood 唔夠 glucose 有一日。So then the body can take back the glycogen and break it back into glucose and put it back into the blood. Same here. The glycogen in the liver can be broken down back to glucose, put it back into blood, and then sent to body cells. Okay, so this is how the picture is going to function. And you need to understand how it works. So imagine some different stories. 例如你要諗食咗嘅 glucose 係點？太多嘅 glucose 係點？ bonus 就係如果身體血 blood 裡面唔夠 glucose 嘅時候，點樣 call 翻出嚟？咁呢啲就係你可以諗嘅嘢。So look at the PowerPoint again. So for summarize, again, for carbohydrates, we need to know what happens when they arrive at the body cells and what happens to the excess ones. In the body cells, they are used by respiration to release energy, while when those glucose are too much, then they will be joined back into polysaccharides, in this case, glycogen. All right. Sorry, I should say glycogen here. Or restructured into fats. And then these glycogen or fats will be stored. Okay. And here tells you under what situation they will be more preferably stored as glycogen, under what situation your body would prefer to store them as fats. Okay. So how about protein? Or I should say amino acids. So once they are absorbed into the body cells, these amino acids, they are absorbed. These amino acids, they cannot be used to build other things. They are too small, okay? They have other functions on itself, but most likely we learn that for growth and repair, what the cells need are proteins. So can you imagine what will happen? So these amino acids would be joined together back into proteins, okay? The large proteins. Now remember that we have 20 different types of amino acids. So based on the cell need, maybe the cell need protein A, so they join the amino acids in this way to make protein A. Maybe the cell needs another protein, protein B. So they join these amino acids in a different way so that eventually they can form another protein. So imagine this story can go on and go on. And with these 20 types of amino acids, the cell can make unlimited types of proteins. And with these unlimited types of proteins, they can be used to build different parts of the cells for growth and repair. Okay? So what happens if these amino acids are in excess too much? So this extra question, you can try it on your own. You can WhatsApp me your answer if you want to know. Okay? So unlike carbohydrates and fats, excess proteins or amino acids cannot be stored. So that means they have to be broken down instead of being stored. So this happens in the liver. They are broken down into either urea, okay? These amino group would be broken down into urea, and the carbon containing part of the amino acid would be converted into glucose or fats. Urea would be excreted by kidney in the urine, while glucose and fats would be used by respiration or stored. This is something that we have learned in the last chapter, so it's exactly the same. So we go back to this picture in the notes. We highlight in red about the process that amino acids are being transported to body cells and used. So these are again, the picture starts here, right? These are the amino acids in your food. So the proteins are digested, becomes amino acids, and now they are in the small intestine. They are then absorbed and transported to liver. 好啦，知唔知下一格應該 highlight 邊度啊？想唔想象到啊？ How did they go to body cells? So now these amino acids are being transported directly into blood. And of course, they arrive at the heart pump out, and now the amino acids are transported to different body cells. So this is point number 2. Point number 3. Point number 4. They are used for growth and repair, and you can mark down here that the amino acids becomes protein. Okay? So mark this down. And these proteins are for growth and repair and making other things like enzymes. And you remember how useful enzymes are, right? And many, many different examples. So you don't need to memorize enzymes, just memorize that they are for growth and repair. So that's all for the use. Now you can see that in this picture, there is another use. Sometimes the amino acids, the blood themselves also need to have some protein there. An example is clotting. 例如你啲血你流血會停㗎嘛？你流血之所以會停咧，係因為血裡面有一啲特別嘅 protein for blood clotting for 停血嘅。咁但係我哋唔使學嘅呢一刻。So 你可以攞支塗改液啦，塗咗呢一啲佢啦。咁呢啲我哋可以唔使學啦，免得搞亂你。Okay? So what happens if they are in excess? When they are in excess, the green pathway 嘛，係咪？咁你綠色熒光筆就 highlight 呢啲 box 喎 ，they will be deaminated in the liver. And they will be converted into the useful carbon-containing useful part would be converted into glucose, glycogen, carbohydrates, fats, whatever those things. Okay? More importantly, the amino group, the nitrogen containing part, would be converted to urea. Okay? And these urea would be dumped into blood again because they should now be transported to the kidney. And at the kidney, they are excreted by urine. So the green pathway represents how the excess amino acids are dealt with. The assimilation of fat, to me, is more similar to the assimilation of carbohydrates. When they're in the body cells, they are used to release energy by respiration, or they can be used to build cell membrane. The way that they are similar as carbohydrate is that excess lipids are stored, but not broken down. So they are stored in the adipose tissue, under skin, or around internal organs.